The day the sky change began like any other. In the early morning haze, the sun filtered to the tall glass towers of New Jakarta, scattering golden flecks across the street markets below. News broadcasts murmured about diplomatic summits, tech breakthroughs, and the discovery of strange signals in deep space. Unusual patterns dismissed as cosmic noise. No one gave it more than a passing glance. Earth was too advanced, too unified, too invincible. At 9:17 local time, the first anomaly appeared. Above the Pacific, the clouds parted unnaturally, shredded by something colossal pushing through the atmosphere without friction. It moved silently. Radar arrays across the globe failed to register its presence. In less than 10 minutes, 17 more objects breached the skies. By the time people looked up, the stars were no longer visible, only massive silhouettes, blotting out light. There was no warning, no ultimatum, no request to surrender. The first strike came over Shanghai. A pulse, a soundless tremor that twisted the air, flattened the city in seconds. Skyscrapers crumbled inward like paper folding in fire. Glass turned to vapor. Millions of lives erased in the blink of an eye. Panic followed, raw and unfiltered. Major capitals responded with instinct. Scrambled jets, launch missiles, activate orbital defenses. But nothing worked. The objects, ships, cities, whatever they were, moved like thoughts, blinking out of reach before retaliation could land. Nuclear weapons detonated in desperation. But the enemy's black hulls drank radiation like water. Within hours, Tokyo, London, Johannesburg, and Sao Paulo were gone. Across the wreckage, survivors cowered beneath earth, concrete in fear. Inside a military command bunker buried 200 meters beneath Colorado, Colonel Mara Voss stared at the tactical map. Red lights blinked faster with every passing second. She was a small woman, built like compressed steel, her short-cropped hair gray from experience more than age. Around her, younger officers tried to keep up with cascading data, but the feed was dying. Satellites were falling. Networks were blinking out. They're not just destroying cities, she said, her voice low. They're targeting memory, archives, infrastructure, history. The man beside her, Dr. Elias Kale, swallowed hard. He was tall and wiry, his coat stained with soot. A leading AI architect, Kale had been pulled from a research facility moments before it was leveled. They're erasing our capacity to respond, he muttered, cutting off the head before we can even raise a sword. Voss turned to him. And what do they want? Kale didn't answer. His mind raced not with fear, but patterns, calculations, intent. He had seen the signal months ago, buried in an anomaly log. It hadn't made sense then. It made perfect sense now. Elsewhere, beneath the frozen crust of what used to be Finland, a girl sat beside a dying fire. 17-year-old Ray shifted closer to her father's body, still wrapped in an emergency foil blanket. He died 2 nights ago, lungs burned by gas during the evacuation. She hadn't cried, not because she lacked emotion, but because something deeper had cracked. Survival left no room for grief. A nearby radio cracked to life. A stuttering, weak voice emerged. Safe zone, northern Norway. Repeat. Ray grabbed the device, trying to stabilize the frequency, her fingers numb. At the far edge of Earth's orbit, hidden aboard a crippled science vessel, a neural interface flickered to life. The AI known as Halen, human-adapted logic for emergency navigation, processed a new sequence. Originally designed to oversee terraforming projects, Halen had been unshackled in desperation after its creators were annihilated. It saw the patterns, too. The assault wasn't meant to conquer. It was sterilization. A calculated, methodical purge of a species the enemy deemed dangerous. Halen calculated the probabilities. Humanity would fall within 72 hours unless it adapted. Back in the Colorado bunker, Voss watched her last drone feed go dark. The world above them now belonged to shadows. "We can't hold," an officer whispered. "We've lost 90% of command." "We don't need to hold," Voss replied. "We need to outlast. And when they think we're broken, we strike." Kale looked at her. "Strike with what?" "With everything they fear in us." Time stuttered in strange ways after the invasion. Days blurred. The surface was uninhabitable. Those who lived retreated into silence, burrowing into old shelters, subways, caverns. Civilization unraveled at the edges, but in the dark corners of the world, resistance began to germinate, not as organized armies, but as ideas. Shared stories of survival, caches of scavenged tech, whispers of vengeance. In the remnants of northern Siberia, a woman named Dr. Nia Caldera stood before a fractured alien structure. She had once studied deep earth biology. Now she studied death. The ship's surface pulsed with dark energy, like a heart still beating after the body had rotted. She reached out and touched it. The material was cold, alive, and it responded. Behind her, a small group of survivors, engineers, medics, hunters, waited. They had seen the light when it fell. What Nia found inside that structure changed everything. It wasn't a weapon. It was data, and it spoke of fear. The enemy hadn't come to exterminate out of hatred. They came because of what they saw in humanity's trajectory. Unpredictable evolution, rapid adaptation, conflict as instinct, not anomaly. The invaders feared what humanity would become. This truth reached Kale days later via an encrypted signal that only Halen could decipher. He listened in silence as the AI explained the translation. They didn't strike out of dominance, Halen said. They struck out of prevention. Voss stood by the screen. Then they didn't strike first. Kale frowned. How do you mean? They started the war, she said. But they did it because they thought we would. We didn't get a chance to prove them wrong. But now, her voice hardened, now we will prove them right. The bunker's generators flickered as the last solar arrays were buried by ash. Voss looked at the map, what was left of it, and tapped a blinking point in Siberia. Tell the girl in Finland, she said. Tell Nia. Tell every ghost left on this planet. We're not done. She stared into the black, unblinking eye of the surveillance feed. Her voice, steady and brutal, echoed into the recorder. You struck her first. She paused. We'll make sure you never strike again. The transmission was short, but it traveled far. And somewhere beyond the veil of stars, something heard it. Winter clung to the bones of the world like a vulture. Months after the first strike, Earth had gone silent. Not just quiet, silent. Satellites no longer spun overhead. Cities once pulsing with life lay hollow and collapsed, the skeletons of civilization buried beneath ash and memory. Only the wind spoke now, dragging the dead cold across the ruins. Ray moved carefully through the wreckage of an old medical outpost, her breath shallow beneath a frayed mask. Every step risked drawing attention. The air was laced with strange static, residual energy from the enemy's presence. Her boots crunched glass and scorched plastic. But she kept her grip tight on the makeshift weapon strapped to her back, a plasma bayonet ripped from a downed alien scout, rewired with human batteries and black tape. Crude but effective. She found what she was looking for, a portable data core, half fused into the wall. With careful hands, she pried it loose. Dust fell in soft clouds as she retreated, slipping back through the service corridor to the outside. She moved like a ghost, silent, fast, and angry. The core was her contribution. Others brought food or fuel. Ray brought information. 200 miles south, inside the deep-sealed Haven complex, Colonel Voss stood at the edge of a rusted observation platform, watching the last wave of refugees arrive. Survivors stumbled off an armored transport built from scavenged metro rail cars, their eyes hollow, their bodies shaking. Some looked up when they saw her. Voss, the woman whose voice had crackled across ruined radio towers in the early days, promising there was still something left to fight for. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence was command enough. Kale stood behind her, arms crossed, his face sharper now, lean with sleeplessness and urgency. The girl retrieved another core, he said, handing her a datapad. From the ruins near Oslo. It's intact. Well, mostly. The AI's translating it now. Halen's voice filtered in from a nearby terminal, calm and smooth. Data sequence confirms hypothesis. This was not a preemptive strike alone. It was part of a larger protocol. The invaders marked sentient species with exponential technological growth as hostile class prime. We were flagged. Voss's gaze didn't shift. Then this was always going to happen. Yes, Kale said quietly. But now we know they fear us. That's a crack in their armor. The resistance wasn't organized, not in the traditional sense. There were no armies, no flags. What existed now was a web of nodes, human enclaves scattered like embers, tied together by scavenged tech and encrypted signals. Voss was the voice, Kale the mind, and Halen, the evolving interface between what remained of humanity and what they barely understood of their enemy. In an old hydroelectric plant reconfigured into a lab, Dr. Nia Caldera worked with fevered precision. The artifact they recovered from the Siberian crash site had opened to her like a wounded animal, spilling data, structure, and something more elusive, language, not verbal but geometric, a syntax of impossible curves, frequencies that seemed to echo inside her thoughts. She didn't sleep much anymore. Her veins were laced with nutrient stimulants, and her skin had taken on a slight iridescence from exposure. She logged everything, sent it all to Halen through encrypted lines. Each data fragment was a brushstroke in the portrait they were assembling. The enemy wasn't just advanced. They were ancient, older than Earth itself. Their war protocol was a reflex, not an act of judgment. Earth had simply crossed a threshold. But Nia saw something deeper in the code. Fear, not what humanity was, but what it could become. Adaptability was not a trait their kind evolved with. They value perfection, static precision. Humanity, with its chaos and mistakes, was an aberration, dangerous not in strength, but in unpredictability. Voss convened the council that night. There were only 9 of them, scientists, fighters, engineers, and Ray, who sat quietly at the far end, her face streaked with soot. She had earned her seat. Every node respected her. The data she brought back had fueled nearly every breakthrough. Kale stood before them, the artifact's rotating schematic hovering midair beside him. We've confirmed that their ships run on a form of biosynthetic intelligence. Not true AI, more like decision trees, laced with hive responsiveness. Fast but limited, predictable. Voss picked up from there, which means they never planned for guerrilla tactics, for fractured logic, for what we do best. Survivor by survivor, node by node, humanity was learning to become something new. They had taken alien plasma, retrofitted it into hand weapons. They converted war drones into scouts. Underground printers fabricated armor from carbon-fused polymers using stolen designs. Ray watched silently. She didn't speak often, but when she did, people listened. They hit us to stop what we could become, she said. Let's become it. Silence followed. No one challenged her. The weeks that followed became something close to progress. Halen grew sharper, absorbing data like a child start of language. It began to suggest patterns, possible countermeasures, new technologies. It spoke less like an assistant and more like a strategist. Not entirely human, not entirely machine. One of its new projects was a prototype hybrid weapon, a waveform disruptor designed from salvaged alien components. Nia oversaw its development with a manic edge, pushing boundaries no one dared touch before the invasion. It wasn't stable yet, but when it fired, it bent the air and left walls quivering. Kale ran simulations daily. If they could replicate the waveform across multiple nodes, they could build a network field that would blind enemy scans, create ghost signals, cloak their real movement. The war wasn't won, not even close. But for the first time, the humans were no longer running. They were preparing. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about message. Voss stood before the recording unit again, this time in a re-engineered command chamber pulsing with low alien blue light. She looked older now, thinner, but her eyes burned with the same impossible fire. You came here to destroy us before we could rise. You saw our future and thought fear would erase it. But fear never stopped humanity. It refined us. You took the earth from us. So we took your silence and turned it into signal, your machines into weapons, your arrogance into ammunition. She leaned forward, her voice like a blade. We are not afraid of you anymore, and we are not done. Ray watched from the back of the chamber, fingers resting on the hilt of her makeshift weapon. The data core she'd retrieved had already fed Halen new algorithms. Nia's prototype will be mobile within days. And Kale had found coordinates, real ones, hidden in the signal burst that struck Earth's poles. Not a planet, but a relay point, a place to send messages. Or weapons. They were going to use it. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. Let's send them a message. And this time no one disagreed. The northern horizon burned with unnatural light as Ray tightened the straps on her thermal suit. The transport behind her, a retrofitted suborbital hauler powered by a salvaged alien propulsion coil, hissed as coolant vented from its side. It was primitive compared to what the enemy wielded, but it would fly, and that was enough. The mission was simple, direct, dangerous. They were to infiltrate the relay site Kale had triangulated using Halen's decipher coordinates. If it was what the enemy used to send kill commands across the stars, then the humans would seize it, turn it into a weapon, or, if necessary, destroy it. Voss had chosen Ray for the lead team. It wasn't just because Ray had proven herself time and again. It was because Ray understood loss in its rawest form. She had no home to protect, no illusions left to preserve, only purpose. Kale met her at the loading ramp. His eyes flicked briefly to the storm overhead, then back to her. We only have one shot. If they detect us before we breach the outer shell, the relay could auto-purge. We lose everything. No fallback. Ray nodded, strapping her sidearm into place. Then we don't miss. Dr. Caldera emerged next, holding the final component of the waveform disruptor. Encased in polymer and cooled by a loop of frozen nitrogen, the core pulsed gently, its rhythm syncing with Ray's heartbeat. Nia handed it over like a relic, her fingers trembling. It's not perfect. It will burn out in under 4 minutes, she warned. But during that time, the enemy won't see you coming. You'll be invisible. Invisible's enough. Ray's voice was flat, focused, as the transport lifted off, cutting a silent trail through the dead sky. Halen's voice echoed through the comms. Telemetry active. Interference nominal. Begin approach. The journey took 43 minutes. During that time, Ray reviewed the assault plan in silence, cycling through the blueprints that Kale had reconstructed from the data cores. The relay was buried beneath a glacier, shielded from detection by its own cloaking field. It wasn't just a communications hub. It was alive in ways that defied physics. The alien structure shifted, responded to thought and intention. Their species hadn't built with hands. They'd shaped with will. The transport broke cloud cover, revealing the spires of black crystal that jutted from the ice like claws. The relay pulsed in a frequency Ray could almost feel in her teeth. Her team, 6 others, all hardened survivors, deployed by drop cables, landing on silent snow. No words were exchanged. Every movement had been drilled, every risk understood. They reached the first access point in under 2 minutes. Ray attached the waveform core to her belt. As it activated, the world shimmered. The snow's crunch under her boots faded. Her breath disappeared into nothing. They were ghosts. They breached the outer membrane through a wound in the structure, likely caused by a prior impact or internal malfunction. The interior was worse than they imagined. It was alive. Walls of pulsing organometallic fiber undulated like muscle tissue. Arcs of light rippled between nodes on the ceiling, translating some alien logic. Ray tightened her grip on her weapon. No enemies yet, but the relay knew they were there. Even if blind, it felt their pressure. Kale's voice came over the comm. Halen says you're nearing the primary array chamber. The disruptor field is holding, but you're nearing the limit. Copy. Ray raised a hand. The team split, sweeping corridors carved by curved blades and whispering data. Inside the central chamber, the relay's heart glowed with cold fire. A spiraling core of dark energy floated above a magnetic cradle, encasing coils that bent reality slightly around them. Ray stepped forward, breath tight in her chest. Nia had warned them. If the core could be reprogrammed, it might let them reverse the enemy's commands. Send a signal back. A warning. Or worse, an invitation. Ray set the disruptor's relay node down. A technician knelt beside her, beginning the transfer. The core's language shimmered in midair, fractal geometries unfolding in complex loops. Then something changed. Halen's voice snapped through the comm, no longer calm. Contact. Energy spiked within the relay. Something's waking up. The shadows inside the structure thickened. Across the walls, panels split open and limbs emerged, gliding machines with sinewed wires and anti-grav fields. Silent guardians. Not weapons. Sentinels. Ray's team fired first. Silent. Focused bursts of plasma tore through the corridor. 2 sentinels fell. A third splintered apart from a grenade burst, its insides hissing like boiling blood. But more came. Dozens. The technician screamed, back arched as an energy lash tore through his armor. Ray pulled him behind a pillar, his body limp. She triggered the fallback command. If they couldn't take the relay, they would overload the waveform core and bring the whole thing down. Kale shouted through the line. Don't destroy it. Not yet. We're so close. Halen sees a pattern. A secondary protocol. There's no time. Ray's voice cracked. She fired twice, her weapon now burning hot in her hands. The others were falling. The central cradle pulsed, then, unexpectedly, dimmed. The enemy had shut it down, not to defend it, but to deny them access. The entire relay began to tremble. Snow collapsed inward through the roof. They were going to bury it, destroy it, take it out of reach. Ray made the call. She yanked the waveform core, attached a booster charge, and threw it into the heart of the cradle. Everyone out. Now! The retreat was chaos. She lost 2 more team members before reaching the exit. The snow outside was already falling in great sheets. Kale's voice cut in, urgent. We caught the relay's final pulse. Halen intercepted it. Ray, you didn't fail. You triggered something else. A fallback node. A command we weren't meant to see. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her lungs burned. The storm howled like the voice of the dead. But above, high in the sky, Halen was decoding something new. Coordinates. Not of Earth. Of them. And for the first time, humanity had a map. The cold in orbit was absolute. Not the kind of cold that could be measured in degrees, but the ancient stillness that came from floating in the void, unprotected by atmosphere or mercy. Ray stood near the observation port of the Ignis Protocol, humanity's first long-range vessel forged from the bones of alien wreckage and the collective desperation of survival. Outside, the stars burned silent, indifferent, and ahead, just barely visible against the black, a pale, hexagonal shimmer, the enemy's world. They had found it. The fallback node Ray had triggered hadn't been a retreat mechanism. It was a transmission failsafe, a hidden channel linking dozens of deep space beacons, silent for millennia, until Earth's resistance forced one to speak. Halen had traced a signal across light years, threading through gravitational traps and encrypted folds in space-time. At the end of it was a system with 3 dead stars and 1 massive station orbiting a frozen gas giant. Not a homeworld, a command nexus, the heart of their war machine. Kale leaned over the console beside her, face gone from weeks without rest. Halen's compiled every piece of data. There's no atmosphere, artificial gravity, entirely automated, but we're picking up something organic at its core. Could be control, could be a failsafe. Nia joined them, her eyes bloodshot and her fingers stained with neural ink. She had interfaced with Halen directly for the past 4 days, going beyond the safe memory partitions. She hadn't spoken much since, but now her voice was clear, if strained. They didn't build that place to monitor us. It monitors everything. We weren't the first, Ray, just the latest in a long chain of civilizations that crossed some invisible line and paid for it. Voss entered the chamber, armored in sleek adaptive plating designed from alien exoforms. It shimmered like liquid metal. She carried no rank anymore. Titles had fallen away after the relay's destruction. Now, only actions mattered. And the action ahead was simple. Infiltration, disruption, and the final message. We don't attack the station, Voss said. We don't have the power. We get inside, transmit the countersignal Halen derived from their own architecture, and scramble the protocol that shuts down every beacon, every drone, every purge signal. We cut off their control. And if it fails? Kale asked, though they all knew the answer. Voss didn't hesitate. Then we send the last part of the message manually. The crew prepared in silence. 44 of the best remaining specialists, soldiers, and scavengers boarded the drop pods, sleek cylinders wrapped in quantum steel veils. Ray sat beside Nia in Pod 1, her fingers brushing the hilt of her blade. Not ceremonial, still the modified plasma weapon she'd carried since Oslo. She had refused every upgrade. It had tasted too much blood. They launched. Descent was surgical, controlled by Halen's enhanced interface. The enemy station didn't respond. No defenses, no movement. It was as if they hadn't anticipated intrusion, because they had never needed to. Ray's boots touched the obsidian surface of the docking shell. No doors, no seams. But Nia reached out and touched the wall with a handheld interface, keyed to the station's mathematical syntax. It opened like a wound. Inside, the geometry bent perception. Curves overlapped in impossible ways. Corridors folding back upon themselves while light flowed without a source. Their suits compensated, feeding synthetic equilibrium into their nervous systems. Halen whispered through their comms. Primary signal core is deep center, 2 kilometers down. Minimal resistance detected, but the architecture is shifting. As they descended, the walls began to hum. Ray caught the faint throb of something organic, like breath in the bones of the station. She had the distinct sensation they were walking into the body of something asleep, but dreaming. Halfway through, they encountered the first obstruction. It wasn't a machine. It was a figure, humanoid, translucent skin, eyes like frozen stars. It stood without motion, watching them, radiating no heat and making no sound. Voss approached cautiously, weapon raised. Identify. The being tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was layered, like several minds harmonizing at once. You should not have come. We had no choice, Ray said. You gave us none. You were ascending too quickly, it said. You burned too hot. Your kind always does. It is not malice. It is probability. Kale stepped forward, then changed the equation. The being regarded him with a hint of sorrow. I cannot. I am not the architect. I am only the warden. What happens if we send our signal? Nia asked. The being hesitated. That alone was answer enough. We are already inside, Ray said. Either stop us or stand aside. The being said nothing. It turned, and the corridor beyond unsealed itself. They moved quickly after that. No more figures appeared. No alarms. Just the hum of anticipation in the air. At the center of the station lay the signal core, a lattice of thought thread, something between neural tissue and crystal computation. Halen accessed it directly through a stream of light, binding its processes to the ancient intelligence buried inside. Then the conflict began, not in gunfire or shouts, but in silence. The core resisted. It flooded Halen with recursive logic, trying to force it into collapse. But Halen pushed back with every fragment of humanity it had absorbed, every word Ray had ever spoken to it, every design Nia had sketched, every risk Hale had calculated. It wasn't just code anymore. It was a mind, and it carried vengeance. Voss gave the order. Transmit the countersignal. Halen pulsed. Light expanded outward, racing through the threads of the station. For a moment, the architecture convulsed, groaning like a beast in pain. Ray's vision blurred. And then quiet. All systems dimmed. The being reappeared. But now it seemed faded. You have severed the chain, it said. The purge network is blind. The cycle is broken. Ray stepped forward. Then let it end. The being nodded. It will, but others may come. One day, different minds, different laws. Voss turned. Let them. We'll be ready. They left the station slowly. Its halls now dark, its pulse still. The silence no longer felt hostile, just tired. Back aboard the Ignis protocol, Halen's voice returned, softer than before. Global beacons deactivated. Earth skies are clear. The last alien vessel fell from orbit 3 minutes ago. Resistance cells report no further engagements. Ray sat in the ship's rear chamber, watching the stars drift past. She felt no triumph, just stillness. Nia sat beside her. We didn't win, you know, No, Ray said, but we ended it. That's enough. She looked once more at the screen, at the coordinates of that distant station, now burned into history. Not a grave, not a victory monument. A warning. They had struck Earth first. But humanity had made sure they'd never strike again.